Our focus today is once again on how we can support answers using the strongest text evidence. We are going to begin by picking up where we stopped Thursday and practicing how growing readers back up answers with the best evidence. Yesterday, we read a text. As we've learned in the past, using text evidence means that we prove our answers by going back to the text. Sometimes an author doesn't answer the question directly, so we have to use the text and find the clues that the authors give, kind of like a detective. We have to highlight, underline those words and phrases that prove our answers, and the trickiest part is finding the strongest answers in the text. So we have to read the text, we have to think about the inferences, connections, questions, and clues, and we have to write down, highlight, or underline specific parts, word for word, of the text that help us explain our thinking and answer our questions when we're reading and writing. So let's go ahead and start by looking at this cartoon. You can see there are many details in this cartoon, so an inference I might can make would be that he used too much hot sauce, and I can tell that because of the clues in the comic. The fire coming out of his ears, that would be evidence to back up my answer. You may hear Blakely Ruth in the background of my lesson. Just like you're at home, so am I. So she's just trying to voice her opinion as we learn together. Okay? All right. So here you have a picture of something that happened in my classroom. And this is a picture of three students playing a game. So we can make inferences. Based on the clues, how can we infer Harper's feeling and what evidence supports your answer? Well, I can infer that Harper is feeling maybe worried and nervous, but in an excited way. And I can tell that because my evidence would be her face. She also might be feeling, this is a little weird, based on her body language. These are clues that lead me to this inference. Now, there are some words that we need to know when we're thinking about inferences and evidence. These are called academic vocabulary words. Examples, details, evidence, and inferences. That was called The Travels of the Potato. Today, we're going to add to our knowledge of this text, and we're going to also be reviewing how growing writers use evidence in their writing. Now, this is where we stopped in our live lesson today, and we'll pick up tomorrow. You do not have a required independent assignment today, but you will have one tomorrow, and it will be in Mastery Connect. I have posted the codes, and you can do them early, but I would suggest waiting until we finish our lesson tomorrow, whole group. If you're joining me later and you're watching this video, you can do it at any time, and those codes are found in the virtual learning section of Google Classroom. So I'm going to show you what that looks like. So go ahead and check out my model with me. I'm going to be making inferences based on text evidence. Notice it says what the text said, which is our evidence. The potato plant is native to the Andes mountain region of South America. The text also says Spanish explorers had never seen it before, and by the 1600s, potatoes were grown in many places in Spain. Well, growing readers, think about their schema, their background knowledge, or what they already know. I already know that people who travel often must eat new foods. People who travel bring things home with them, and farmers want to grow good food crops. So I can infer, and this is my inference, I can infer Spanish explorers decided that potatoes were good to eat. Spanish explorers brought the potato back to Spain, and people in Spain started raising potatoes for food. These are all inferences because the author didn't tell us. We had to use the clues or the text evidence to make these inferences. Here's another example. By the early 1700s, potatoes were being raised in England as a food crop. The plants grew well in the cool, moist climate. What do I already know? Well, I know that plants need certain conditions so they will grow well. And I can infer that the climates of the Andes Mountains, Spain, and England must be very similar places. I don't know that because the author told me. I know that because of the clues found in the text evidence and my background knowledge. These are just a couple of inferences I can make. Now I want us to think about what we know about writing. So this prompt goes with our text, The Travels of the Potato. Explain how and why the use of the potato spread to other countries. Include at least 3 text details. Now in the margin, you're going to see just a couple of reminders what we would do in writing. So we would break down that prompt with our do what T chart. And we would think, what kind of prompt is this? Races, Oreo, or narrative? Let's have a quick review of what evidence means when we're writing. One of the strategies we've learned this year is to use races in our writing. The R stands for restate the question. A, answer the question. C, cite text evidence. E, explain the evidence. And S, summarize your information. This is informational writing. Notice how important it is on this C when we cite evidence, because this is the part of the reading skill, backing up claims with evidence from the text. And this is what growing writers do. Now, we won't actually begin or continue writing. We've been writing all year. We won't do that virtually today, but I'm just reminding you of some important things about writing. Notice if we were going to do this writing piece in class, we would then move into our Foursquare where we organize information. We call this the planning stage, and this is what it might look like for races. This is also when you would decide how many paragraphs you want in your writing. Now, since this prompt asks us about multiple pieces of evidence, it said 3, then I would suggest doing something that looks like what you see on my screen. It's important to organize your information in your writing as a writer because it's on our important writing rubric. So notice that arrow is pointing to organization. I wrote a strong introduction, body, and conclusion. I used appropriate transitions to connect my ideas. Now, I also want you to notice it's important to see content here. So the content states that we must use evidence. So text evidence is not just important in reading, it's also important in writing. Writing rubric, this person would not be a 3 or 4 writer. Here you're going to see a piece of writing based on this prompt. In the 1500s, Spanish explorers learned to eat potatoes in South America in the Andes Mountain. They carried potatoes on their boats back to Spain. The use of the potato spread from there to other countries. It became a major food crop in England and Ireland. The potato thrives in places where the climate is cool and moist. Now this is a very targeted answer, and it answers the prompt. However, it doesn't follow that organization of races. So it doesn't restate. It does answer in races, so this is the A. The site can't be found. That's when we would say the author says or the text says, and we would quote the text. And then we would explain it and then sum it up. So if we're thinking about that. All right, let's go ahead and continue our reading focus. Here we have a text. This text is called Fruit of the Bog by Alden Sims. And I'm noticing in the margin something that looks like cranberries floating on top of the water. That's important. The first people known to eat cranberries were the Native Americans in northern regions of what is now the United States. Centuries before the Pilgrims arrived in 1620, Native Americans ate a bread made with cranberries mashed into cornmeal. They also munched on dried cranberries throughout the winter, but cranberries were useful for more than just food. Native Americans made dye from the berries to color blankets and rugs, and they used the berries as a medicine for the treatment of wounds. In 1810, Henry Hall from Cape Cod, Massachusetts, became the first person known to cultivate cranberries. The word cultivate means to grow as a farm crop. Cranberries grow only in particular conditions. They grow best in bogs. They need an acid peat soil, a steady water supply, and a covering of sand. The growing season must last from April to November, followed by a dormant period in the winter. The winter chill is needed for the fruit buds to mature. Do you know how cranberry farmers know when the berries are ripe and ready to harvest? The small berries float to the surface of the bog and bob along there. The farmers are able to pull off this nifty harvest trick. because inside each berry is a tiny pocket of air. For years, the number one cranberry producing state in the United States was Massachusetts. However, since 1995, the state of Wisconsin has been the top cranberry producer. In 2010, Wisconsin harvested more than 4 million barrels of cranberries. So notice how I did underline details that I felt told me about conditions that cranberries need to grow in. I did that because I know in just a moment I'm going to need to answer a question about that. So I wanted you to see where it tells me more about what they need to be able to grow. So now here I want you to look at my model. So the question says that there are two parts, and good inferences are those that can be backed up with evidence, words, or phrases from the text. What inference can you make about Wisconsin based on details in the article? A, it was first settled by Native Americans who ate berries and corn. Well, I don't think that tells me anything about Wisconsin. Doesn't answer the question, so you can see I crossed that out. B, it was a major producer of blankets and rugs dyed red. Well, I don't think that answers anything about Wisconsin, so I crossed it out. Look at C. It provides the conditions needed for growing berries. I'm thinking that it must be the type of environment where cranberries need to grow since they grow so many there. I'm going to circle that one, and you can see I did that. D, it has always been the number one cranberry producing state. Well, I think D is the distractor. It is not the strongest answer. So I circled C in part A. Look at part B. Choose one piece of evidence from the article that best supports the answer in part A. Now I want you to notice I drew a line from A in part B to A in part A. A in part B says the first people known to eat cranberries were the Native Americans in northern regions of what is now the United States. Well, this backs up answer choice A in part A, so it is not the best answer. You can see that because I've crossed it out. B, the growing season must last from April to November, followed by a dormant period in the winter. Well, I don't think that supports anything in part A, so I crossed it out. C, for years, the number one cranberry producing state in the United States was Massachusetts. Well, I think that could have been the answer, but wasn't the strongest evidence, so let's see D. However, since 1995, the state of Wisconsin has been the top cranberry producer. I don't know about you, but top producing places are better than just number one cranberry producing state. So since D says they've been the top producer since 1995, I think that's stronger evidence to support the answer in part A. Notice how I had to choose the strongest evidence, and that's what makes this skill so hard. Okay guys, this is where you'll find your independent work. You will go to Google Classroom in the section called Virtual Learning, and when you do that, you're going to click here. Now once you click Text Evidence Independent Practice, you will then find this where it gives you a code. You will go to Mastery Connect, click in our code, and solve a quiz on using text evidence to support inferences, just like you've seen me model in class. This needs to be complete no later than Monday at 12 when we meet together again. I'll be looking for your responses in Mastery Connect. Thank you for joining me today.